Oh my goodness. I am crazy sore today. So today's day 4 of 30 days to deadlifting. And in yesterday's episode, I talked about how I had 4, activities because they weren't all training sessions, right? Yesterday, I had an hour of jiu-jitsu, got a promotion, which was really cool. Then after that, I took a long walk because traditionally I don't like to do jiu-jitsu before any kind of heavy lifting. And since that was the case for yesterday, I decided to take a long walk right after training. So I ended up doing about 4-mile walk to try to recover. And man, I'm feeling it because shortly after that, I did the deadlifts, right? And then later in the day, I rested and recovered. Man, my hands were just beat to hell. And so I was going to try to give my hands some time to recover because they were feeling pretty tender after pulling for 3 straight days. And I had, let me see here. I had 32 sets. So sets of 10 one-arm swings on the minute, every minute for 32 straight sets. So 32 straight minutes of one-arm swings. And I was just feeling so damn beat up by the end of jiu-jitsu and deadlifting, and my hands were just crazy tender. I decided to, I was going to do the swings. I was going to see how far I could go. My stop signs, if to stop the swing session, it was if I couldn't maintain my breathing, right? If I couldn't maintain passing the talk test before the next interval, then I would stop. Or if the swing slowed down or what have you. So I have a few like stop signs that I adhere to. And so I ended up doing the swings like I really put them off to the end of the day. It was just really procrastinating because I didn't want to do them. But I got it done, went outside, did them in the front yard, and there'll be an episode of that coming up pretty soon because I'm documenting a lot of the path to sinister stuff that I'm doing as well. So those episodes will come up here pretty soon on the channel. Anywho, ended up doing them outside, half of them in the complete dark. Like by the time here in Corpus, it starts getting dark here around 5:30. And so by 6 o'clock, it is pretty much like almost dark. 6:30, definitely nighttime. And so I went out there. It was between 5:30, 5:45, and I just got after it, right? And to my surprise, I hit that second wind, and I finished pretty strong. But I did bell down. I didn't use a 44 like I was scheduled to just because of, how I was feeling, but I still wanted to get the work in. So I used a 40 kilo. And, dude, I'm telling you what, man, today I am feeling it. Like my hips, my glutes, my hamstrings are just, man, they are crazy sore. They are beat to hell. And so, here we are, day 4, 30 days of deadlifting, and I didn't know which way I wanted to go. So I did a little bit of mobility work, moved around a little bit on the ground, hit some Happy Baby series stuff, did a few Cossack squats, kind of open up the hips, trying to get the hamstrings moving. But man, I'm just crazy stiff. As you can see here, I'm moving a little bit like a tin man. Like I'm not even going all the way down on my right leg, just because my legs are really tight, and it's just almost kind of painful. I mean, 320 swings, it's nuts after pulling and jiu-jitsu. So anywho, what I've decided to do for day 4 is, again, this is all just an experiment, right? Like I said when I first opened this series, is what would happen if I deadlifted every day. Well, I'm already feeling that. So I knew, I had no intention of trying to hit, high percentages or, like a traditional like deadlift cycle. So I was going to, be as smart as I can about it. So what I've decided to do moving forward, I think this will be the best thing for me, is I'm going to be deadlifting 3 days in a row, right? I have a structure that I'm following. So I'm going to deadlift 3 days in a row. And then the 4th day is going to be a technical day. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned in the backstory, like the first episode of this series was I talked about I kind of told my whole story, how I kind of got into the deadlift and why it became an obsession and whatnot. But one of the key things that I mentioned is I decided to get off all the barbell plans, right? I'm going to stop trying to get the volume in, right? Even though volume is important, right? That's where the strength is built, is in the volume, and right, and if you have the right variability, like that's where the volume is built, that's where the strength is built. But I wasn't progressing, so that's when I decided to take a step back and focus on getting better at deadlifting. And that's what today's episode is all about, is the skill practice. And this is exactly what I did right here, is just worked on my setup, worked on getting into that wedged position. And what I started doing was I would set a day like once a week. And once a week I would work my way up to about 70% of my max. Sometimes on average I would stay between 50 to 60%. I'll tell a little bit about that here in a second, but some days I would work up to like a 70% of my maximum, and I would just set up and wedge my body, get into that position and hold that position. Try to maintain my posture, right? I talk about this in several episodes. I've even written posts on this. Yesterday I mentioned that, I have the privilege of looking at strength training through Jiu-Jitsu eyes and Jiu-Jitsu through strength training eyes, right? And I'm going to expand on a little bit of that today. So looking at strength training through Jiu-Jitsu eyes, Jiu-Jitsu is founded on what I believe and what I've come to experience is Jiu-Jitsu is centered on two principles, really. Posture, positioning, right? The better your posture is, the stronger you are in your posture, the better position that you're going to have. And then the better position that you have, the higher percentage finish rate you will have, right? Tapping your opponent, passing his guard, recovering your guard, what have you, right? And so the same rules apply as I started getting into this, deadlift game. The same rules apply is as I looked at past videos, because I record all my videos of my training. As I look at those videos, man, my posture is just really poor. Like I'm not getting my weight behind the bar. My upper back is really weak. And so, I'm just going to practice this setup. So once a week, I would load up the bar and I would just set a timer for like 20 minutes. And I would do sets of 3 and just get into that, wedge myself into that position and hold it for like a 2 to 3 count. Drop it. I do it for 3. And then when I was ready to go, I do the next one. And that's what I'm doing here in this practice. And then eventually it got to a point to where like it was just that's when my deadlift really went to the next level. It wasn't all the volume, that definitely accelerated, what I was doing, but it was this skill practice. And that's what this episode is about, is strength is a skill. It's a skill set, right? And just like anything else, just like martial arts, just like jiu-jitsu, a skill is it's something that needs to be practiced, right? And that's what we talk about, not always approaching your training as a workout, but approaching it as a practice, right? You're a professional. You should approach it as a skill set and as a practice, right? And so what I would eventually do was I would load up the bar with 50 to 60%, and I would just leave it there in the gym floor. And every few hours, kind of like grease the groove, every few hours I would just walk by and I would wedge myself, for a set of 3, and then I'd go on about my day. And that was the game changer. That's when everything changed for me. Then when I started getting the volume in, I was repeating that setup so many times. I perfected the setup. I want there's no such thing as perfect. Most people will say, like, I want to say I pretty much perfected that setup for me, right? And that was the game changer. And this is something that you'll find, if you want to learn a little bit more about this wedge, there's several videos, but you can grab our free ebook, Deadlift Blueprint. I talk a lot about this in the Deadlift Blueprint. It's a free download. You can grab it. I'll put the link in the description area. But this is what I did. And you see, since the weights are light, I'm trying to get them to float. I'm trying to get them to pop off the ground. When you do that, like this is 140 kilos, right? So 308. If I can get that weight to pop off the floor, I have virtually removed 300 8 pounds from the bar. From there, it's a straight path. I virtually removed that much weight off the floor. Now, as the weights get heavier, you can see here I'm going to get ready to go up to 184 kilos, so 405. And as the weights get heavy enough, the plates won't move, but the bar will bend, but you'll be in the best position, right? And so what happens is as you get stronger in your posture, you get in a better position. And then the better position that you have, the more leverage you will gain over the barbell, over the kettlebell, over your opponent if we're talking jiu-jitsu. So jiu-jitsu is founded on those two principles, and that's why I say I've had the privilege of looking at strength training now through jiu-jitsu eyes. Okay, and I'm a little weak right now, but I used to be able to. I got to a point to where I would wedge myself. I would work up to, like, my 70% was 200 kilos, so 440. I would do this exact drill with 440 pounds, and I would wedge, and I would still get the weights to pop. It got to that point. And as I look back, that is what built my 290 kilo deadlift. Not all the volume just accelerated it. Okay? And so when you can do this and you repeat this over and over and over and over, man, and you can get, like, for me, when I got to where I was popping 440 off the floor without having to pull it, just setting up and the weights were popping, imagine what that does for your deadlift. This honors and stays committed to the continuity of the training process. Like, I'm not technically deadlifting today, but I'm maintaining the continuity. I'm still practicing this skill set, right? I'm not doing a lot of all these crazy assistance exercises to build my upper back, to build, I'm not doing, deficit deadlifts and pin pulls. Like, that takes a lot of time. Because you still got to pull the weight from the floor. So if you can master this skill and you can do this and get those weights to pop, dude, your deadlift is going to climb crazy. This is what took my deadlift. The next cycle that I did, I was doing this practice. The next cycle that I did, that's when I went from, barely being able to pull 405 to 440, and then 440 to 484. And then 484, I went straight to, 220 kilos. I went straight to 240 kilos. So 530, 529. Then I went to 551. I was stuck at 551 for like maybe 6 months. Then it was time for me to start getting some volume in. As I started doing that, eventually I got to 260 kilos, which is 573, I believe. And then eventually I got to 270, and then 282, and then 639, which is 290 kilos. But it's this that I would practice once a week. And so that's what I'm doing through these 30 days of deadlifting is I'm pulling 3 straight days in a row. And then the 4th day is kind of like a recovery day. And I'm just loading up to about 70. I think the 405 was 80% for me right now. So I just worked up to that and just worked on getting set up. See, when the weights are light enough, can I get them to pop and then hold that position, right? So strength is a skill. And like any skill, it must be practiced, right? And the first time I heard that, it just really hit home. After training jiu-jitsu for 20 years, I've looked back and, you hear people ask you questions like, man, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do? If anybody ever asked me that, I would say, what I would do? I wouldn't focus on techniques. I wouldn't focus on tactics. I wouldn't focus on, deficit deadlifts or anything like that. What I would do is I would focus on the concepts. Okay, and this goes for both jiu-jitsu and strength training. I would focus on the concepts, the why behind the technique. Why am I gripping this way? Why do I need to get into this position? Why do I need to grab the collar like this? Why do I need to do this, right? So once you understand those concepts, the how, right, the practical part, the how becomes easy. Okay, once you understand the concept, you can practice the techniques. You can practice the skill, right? So why do the wedge? Well, like, how does this carry over, right? So these are things that I, as I look back, right, hindsight. And in time, as you practice this setup enough, in time, as you practice the concepts enough, man, when it's time to actually load up the bar and pull, when it's time to get on the mat and start your sparring sessions, the concepts in all the drills, in all the practice will manifest itself in the training, right? Whether it's on the bar, whether it's snatching a kettlebell, whether it's your sparring session on the mat. Like, again, understand the concepts first. Then you can practice those concepts. Or, i.e. drilling them, practicing them. Once you practice those, then they manifest themselves in the training, right? And dude, when you do this, your strength gains, the strength gods will lay like some crazy things at your feet, right? It will lay your biggest desires at your feet. And you can apply this to all areas of life. Life on and off the mat, on and off the platform, right? But you apply this in your training and watch your strength elevate to the next level, okay? I'll get more into how I look at, you know what? I'll break it down right now. So remember how I mentioned I'm looking at Jiu-Jitsu, strength training through Jiu-Jitsu eyes, right? Those are the understanding the two principles, understanding the concepts. And then if we look at, strength training through Jiu-Jitsu eyes, there's only so many, like look at the deadlift, right? Like imagine deadlifting every single day. There's only so many heavy pulls. I think it was Ed Cohn that said, like, you only have so many maxes in your career, right? Choose them wisely. I think the same thing goes for Jiu-Jitsu. Like, you only have so many hard rolls. Like in Jiu-Jitsu, there's this saying, like, pohada every day. Basically means like going, balls to the wall every day, going all out every single day. Like, you only have so many of those in you, right? And I know several guys that I've trained with over the last 20 years are just busted, broken, and they can't train like that. They can't train like they used to because it was all about, going hard, going ham every single session. So I look at my Jiu-Jitsu the way I look at deadlifting, right? I surf the different intensities, right? Different number of rounds that I'm going to do. Like if I'm going to do, let's just say if I'm going to do, if I train 3 days a week and I'm doing, 5, 6 rounds over 3 days, that's what, 18 rounds. Well, maybe one day I'll do, 10, maybe one day I'll do 5 rounds. The next day I'll do 12 rounds. The next day after that, I'll do the 18 rounds, right? So varying how many rounds you're going to do, right? And then intensities. Look at your ranking levels. You've got, white to black belt. Those are your intensity zones, and I won't always roll with every single black belt and go pohada every single time because that's a fight. That's a war right there, and when I say war, I'm not talking about like, obviously this isn't like the military or armed forces, but like it's a really tough battle. 2 human bodies, going at each other. And so I will spend I think on average, the majority of my training will probably be spent with the blue to purple and brown area, right? And then every now and then a little peak, right? A little peak, like a deadlift, and I'll roll with a black belt, once or twice, throughout the week or what have you. With the skull and mat, I roll with the black belts all the time. But like, you understand what I'm saying, right? Like every single, let's say, within a month, you're only going to pull your heaviest weights 5 times. Well, throughout the month, I'm only going to roll like all out is, everything I have 5 times in Jiu-Jitsu. And that's how you train for longevity. That's one of the core pillars of my training system that I've kind of developed that I take my guys through is training for longevity, right? Because Jiu-Jitsu is great, deadlifting a barbell is great, but like going at it 100% every single day, just because, some influencer says that, if you're not training that hard, you're not serious. Like, hey, you still have a career to run. You still have a family to lead, right? And you can't be a better man, husband, and father if you're broken because you're going ham every single day, either on the mat or, on the barbell, right? If you're, what did Paul say? Like, if you're really trying to prove yourself or something like that, join up the armed forces, right? Those people really put their lives on the line. But this here, man, this is training, right? This is training. This is your practice. This is, this is something that you should enjoy doing. And I'm going to dive more into that in tomorrow's. I'm going to dive into a little bit of that in tomorrow's episode. Doing what you love, right? Finding something that you enjoy training, because there's a lot that goes into that. But that's pretty much all I got, man. I encourage you to look at your strength training as a skill set. Practice the skill set. If you're pressing, trying to learn how to press, if you're trying to press a kettlebell, trying to press the beast or whatever that is, get better at pressing, get better at snatching, get better at deadlifting, get better at your setup. practice your skills in jiu-jitsu. You don't have to go hard every single day. So that's pretty much it, man. That's all I got. I appreciate you reading and appreciate your watching. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.